Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're hailing from. Welcome to another edition of the future of OpenShift Administration with PM and UXD. Today we're talking about, some fun things, and I'd like to just start our show with a round of introductions. I'm Chris Short, technical marketing manager here at Red Hat, also executive producer of this thing we call OpenShift TV. Ali, why don't you go next in the fun round of intros?
Yeah, hey everybody. Thanks for the intro, Chris. So the name's Ali Mobram. I'm the OpenShift PM, Console PM. And today I brought a couple of great guests, right? So first off, we're going to have Megan Hall, one of our lead UXD folks that's going to kind of cover anything and everything over-the-air upgrades. So some really cool stuff. And then after that, we're going to go into some live demos with one of our console architects. Sam Paget is here today with us, and he's going to be our demo king. So that being said, let me hand this off to Megan.
Let me share my screen. Let me know if you can see and hear.
Yes, you're good.
Awesome. And keep me honest on time.
Will do.
So just cut me off if I take too long. So as Ali said, I'm an interaction designer mainly focused on the admin perspective of OpenShift, and sharing today some of the improvements and enhancements that we've made around the update experience in OCP in the console. So the first part of this, we just want to show like what's landed. Most of what has landed that I'm showing here today was in 4.6, then jump to what's coming soon, 4.8, 4.9 releases, and then what we're exploring for the future.
One thing I want to kind of jump in real quick and like give a quick little vision of what we've been doing. So like Megan from the UXD team and engineering team, they've been doing an amazing job of like bringing transparency into the upgrade process. And like in the future goal, again, this is the future show, so we want to talk about in the future. We want to like build and establish so much trust with our users that we could set up auto updates on the clusters, and that users eventually don't even realize that the upgrade's happening. So in order to do that, we got to take incremental steps, and showing, kind of what's happening and behind the scenes is, part of that. So yeah, back to you, Megan.
Thanks, Ali. So we have a group of UXD researchers that have been conducting interviews around all things update related. And so we were able to take action on in 4.6 from some of the feedback that we were hearing, which are things like channels are confusing. Like it would be great if we could understand better how they work. Things like candidate fast and stable. Users want access to release notes in the console, and more transparency, sort of what Ali referenced as like what's happening during the update, and then making things inside of cluster settings with regards to OCM more actionable. So the main areas of focus for 4.6 as a recap is to make it easier to find information on channels and versions, provide recommended update paths, and inform on operator and node progress during an actual update.
One thing if people don't know what OCM is OCM is our cluster manager that's part of our SaaS offering. So if you go to cloud.redhat.com, you'll get OCM right up there. That's the multi-cluster manager piece.
So the first part of this new work that landed in 4.6 focused on guiding users to recommended update paths and available channels. So what you'll see here on the cluster details page under the cluster settings tab is this new visualization that we've added that I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. But I want to focus first on some of the like channel help text and linking to documentation that we provided here. So we are trying to surface a little bit more about what channels are and linking out to documentation. So you'll see this new popover that we added here regarding channels. And in that update modal, we also link out to learn more as well. So there's sort of three visualizations that you may find when you navigate to that cluster settings tab. And the first one is where we hope that you find yourself most often, which is up to date. And so what you see is this blue line with a single dot denoting the current version that you're on and the channel that you're in. So if you see this single line, there are no other available channels and you are up to date and doing great. This second state that you can find yourself in is that there are available updates for the channel that you're currently in. What we do if there are more than one, if there's more than one choice there, we just surface the farthest leap that you can take all the way to the right. And then if there's more in between that you'd want to choose from, we surface that in a popover. And then the last status that you can find yourself in is that there are updates for the current channel that you're in. And then this gray line denotes that there is a next available channel. There are limitations to this visualization. So you could be, if you're on 4.3, we're not showing you the channels for 4.5 and 4.6 because you have to get yourself to that 4.4 channel to continue to make progression through that update.
So like Megan said, we can't show you everything because it's kind of overwhelming, right? But we do try to show you like the best possible path forward. That's the goal, is to help move people along. Again, there's tons of advantages of having the latest stuff, right? You got all the latest security fixes, you got all the latest bells and whistles, you have the most stable build, and it's easiest for us to come in and to resolve issues when you're at the latest, right? So we really are motivated to help you get motivated to get to the latest. That makes sense.
And just a couple other small notes here. We're linking now to the release notes for the current version that you're on, so that you can compare your current version and then what's available. And then you can also interact with the versions on that line to link you out to release notes as well. And then in this popover middle, we're linking out. So all of the versions that are available for you to choose in between that farthest leap are also denoted in that plus more with release notes. So
can you go back a sec? Sorry, to interrupt. Like previously, we didn't have all these convenience links to the release notes. You kind of had to go and search for them yourselves. So we thought it was really important to just bring this information right to people's fingertips. Reduce the headache of them having to go search for all the different release notes, and then also creating this visualization of like the best path forward again, right? So it's all about really increasing that transparency and making it easy as possible for our users to make smart decisions when upgrading their cluster.
So I thought. All right, folks, we're back. Apologize for the issues there. Just making sure that we're live everywhere and we can get started again. All right, so we are having just a bang up day here on the channel. I do apologize for all the technical errors and difficulties. It's amazing what happens when you try to just make things more reliable. They break. So yeah, having fun with our own high availability today. So please, Megan, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Am I still sharing my screen?
Yes, you are.
Okay. All right, awesome. So I think where we left off was just describing what our intentions were behind this channel visualization. So in order to provide even more transparency into the upgrade process, what we wanted to do was sort of show an in-progress checklist of what's happening during the update. So I'm just going to go through this flow really quickly. Say I am on my current version is 4.3.18. I click that update button because I'm ready to make an update. The version that's selected is the farthest jump in the channel that I'm currently in. So fast 4.3. So I've got 4.3.2.2 pre-selected. I hit update, and this is when we now have this new in progress checklist that starts to surface the progress of cluster operators, master nodes, and worker nodes. And I actually am going to switch to a pre-recorded video from YouTube that shows this visualization a little bit better than my static screen. So we've just clicked update, and now you can see this update to 4.5.4 in progress. And as soon as these cluster operators start to kick off, what you'll start to see is this progress bar start to load. So 2 of 30, etc. Now fast forward through this a little bit, but you'll see you're now going to get feedback every time you go back to this details tab during an upgrade. And I can fast forward through that a little bit too. It's not always the case that these cluster operators finish before master and worker nodes start to progress, but that may happen here in this example. We'll see.
This is one of my favorite screens. Like previously, there was not this level of transparency. There was no breakup
Right.
of like cluster operators versus the master nodes versus the worker nodes. So this is really cool and really amazing that like we can visualize this and we get enough information. And then if something goes wrong, like you'll know.
It services it for you. Yeah.
And I think of note, the only thing that we've added since these wireframes were created was the ability to add custom machine pools. So if you have like info nodes that will start a new list underneath the workers, and you'll see that progress here as well.
Yeah.
The only other nuance of this is that at least for 4.6, these worker nodes can still progress once we mark an update as complete. So that's just one thing. It's not surprising here that these worker nodes are still progressing, but we've marked your update status as up to date. And as soon as those worker nodes have reached 8 of 8 in this particular example, that will disappear. And I believe in 4.7 or future that those worker nodes will actually be a part of what we validate as a cluster being up to date. So this is, I think this is maybe only for 4.6. And there is a little popover that just tells you a little bit more information of what's happening, and not to be surprised to see that progress still occurring. Mm-hmm. And then the very popular question, what if a failing condition occurs? This is definitely something that the over-the-air team is continuously trying to work on in terms of the messages that we're surfacing here, and how often or playing around with the threshold of the cluster operator actually failing. So what we've added here is a quick link to view conditions. And we're working on improving the messages that we're surfacing there as well to make them more actionable. But the hope here is to provide as much transparency as possible as to what's happening with that failure, and if in actuality an action needs to be taken, or that failure will actually resolve itself. And then the last part of all of this that landed in 4.6 was these new recommendations. So there's 3 new recommendations that we've added here. One, when a new patch becomes available, when a new minor release becomes available, and when a new channel becomes available. These recommendations will surface in that notification drawer, and you'll be able to take actions on them there. So I can move now to what's coming soon and sort of what's in the pipeline. I'll try to cover this really quickly, but so we're sort of continuing to try to address this long list of feedback that we are continuing to hear. One is to improve the way that we handle the failing true during an update, and the OTA team, like I mentioned, is working on that. The next big part of this is providing general update information in OCM for users to better understand how OCP releases and updates work. And then there's some small fixes that we made to improve like some channel UX when no channel is available, no channel is selected, and when the current version cannot be found, as well as providing the ability in the UI to configure air-gapped environments in the cluster settings. So Ali, I don't know if you want to provide a little bit more background on the goal behind this release page and the value that this will add into OCM, but basically what we're trying to do here is surface the four most recent versions of OpenShift, their corresponding maintenance support, whether that's full support, maintenance, or end of life, and the latest version for each of the channels, as well for the corresponding OpenShift minor releases, as well as some other information like the date it was released, et cetera. And this is just the beginning of this particular unit of work. I think right now we're trying to surface as much information as to like why it's important to keep your clusters up to date and better understand how releases and updates work with OCP. This will become more valuable if we can start to think about how this matters across your current fleet and the state that your current fleet is in.
One thing I want to point out or highlight on this screen right here, if you all look at OpenShift 4.6 and you go to the bottom part, you see EUS 4.6. I can't remember what the exact acronym stands for, but that's essentially our extended support lifecycle. Anyone remember what EUS stands for?
Extended users support. Extended update support. There you go.
Update support. Nice. Yeah. So that means you get support until the next EUS version that comes out, which is going to be 4.10, right? So you could stay on 4.6 longer if you wanted to. And that's to help and enable our customers that aren't able to upgrade as fast as possible, aren't as nimbly as some others. So we have that built in there. Before we go any further, I just kind of want to ask anyone in the stream, like, do you guys have any feedback for us? Any information that we're not sharing with y'all that you think is important, you'd like to see? Are we sharing too much? We don't want to overwhelm people either. Yeah, let us know if you have any feedback on how or what we can improve in this process for all.
Yeah, the folks are a few seconds behind us as far as liveness and chat, so feel free to comment and I can fish those questions back up to the team.
All right, back to you. Let's keep going.
I don't know if it's worth saying, but so I guess we're focusing on putting this into OCM now, because that's a place where you sort of have a list of all of your current clusters, and it's the hope there is to be able to apply. So these are the latest OpenShift releases, and in the future understand like where are all of my clusters, where are they right now, and what available updates do they have, and how can I get there. These are just some really small improvements that we tried to make in OCP. So again, we're on the cluster settings details tab. Today, we don't do a really great job when a channel isn't selected. And so the hope here is to add an alert to surface, and like in order to request update recommendations, configure a channel and change that like the empty state under channel to say not configured. That way we encourage users to sort of set that configuration and receive the recommendations. The second part of this is something that I think we often see, which is this version not found. And this happens if you are on nightly versions. So we would like to change this status underneath the channel, like to remove that channel selector and say that no channels are available, and that update recommendations aren't available for nightly builds.
So just in case people don't know what nightly builds are, if you go to openshift.com/try and you select one of our options, right? That will take you to OCM. Yeah, let's just do it for people. So openshift.com/try.
I've dropped it in chat for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, so here you could come in and see all your different options. So let's just, for example, take try it in the cloud. So let's click that one. This will actually take you to OCM, right? Or cloud.redhat.com, OpenShift Cluster Manager. Now you have all these different options, right? So if we scroll down a little bit, let's say we want to install to AWS ourselves, we would select that AWS on the left. And then I always recommend people do IPI unless you have some crazy requirements that you can't do IPI. But if you look right here, and it's subtle, right? But it's there. So right under the Mac OS dropdown, we actually have developer preview, download pre-release build. So that link is our nightly build. So every night we put the latest and greatest there for anyone to come and give it a try. So if you scroll down a little bit, this will allow you to download and install the nightly build. So if you want the bleeding, cutting edge, this is it. You guys can set it up, try it out, play with it, do whatever you want. But one of the caveats with the nightly is I don't believe you could do over-the-air upgrades, right? Hence our warning message of there's no channels available. Because it's so cutting and bleeding edge, we can't guarantee upgrades will work. So that's why we just disable it for that.
Makes sense.
And then the last one is, I think this does happen. I'm not sure how often, but perhaps you've forced an upgrade in the CLI, and that version that you've upgraded to is not in the channel that you previously selected. So here what we have today is just version not found. And we wanted to provide a little bit more information as to what's happening. So an alert that says the version 6.1 isn't found and stable for 5. And then making more explicit messaging in that update modal for the channel that we have actually found your current version and what we're providing in that dropdown.
Nice.
So those are just some small things. And then the last piece of this that we're working on currently is configuring your upstream and being able to edit that in the UI. So there's a default configuration from Red Hat, or we want to allow the ability to provide a custom update service URL. So we're on the cluster settings page. A little bit further down underneath that visualization, you'll see this upstream configuration field. And so we want to make that editable and just provide a modal where you can switch that upstream configuration. And it's probably good to note here, we should think about adding this to the cluster version details as well, because that field is also there. So being able to edit that in both places would probably be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, so for air gap, we give you that ability to set up the Cincinnati service, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Locally behind your firewall, so you can set up your upgrades that way, just in case your environment requires that, which a lot of companies and governments and whatever do, right? So we want to enable that they get the same high level experience that everybody else does, and everything else should perform the same, right? You'll get the same UX experience, same for the rollout for all of it. So this allows you to configure that endpoint to get you to move forward.
And then the last part of this are just improvements that we're exploring for the future. And some of them are follow-ons to the OCP console versus OCM. So I can try to run through these really quickly. For OCM, things that we're trying to explore is just surfacing more information. So with the addition of that new releases page, we really want to make that valuable to the clusters and that you currently have. So your fleet of clusters. So surfacing things like on this overview dashboard, the update status, what clusters are up to date versus what clusters have updates available. And then also surfacing the visualization that we added in the OCP console for channels under the cluster details as well in OCM. something that's even more impactful probably is, okay, yes, you're telling me that I have the ability to update, but I may be really far behind, so show me how to get there. And that's something that I think we're really trying to look at, both show me how to get there in the UI or also in the CLI. And so that's something that we're definitely looking at as well. And these are all very conceptual wireframes. So it may not end up looking like this at all. I'm going really quickly, so stop me, Ollie, if you want to add anything.
So go back to the other one real quick. This is, I need to work backwards. I've been told I need some security fix or something that's in this certain version, right? And I'm at this version. Let me know the fastest, least amount of hops to get me to this version, because I have requirements or needs of a certain thing, right? So this is the work backwards mode, which is super helpful. All right.
Like being able to say, I want to be on this channel and I want this particular version and this is where I am, so show me how to get there. Without having to leave the context of OCM. And then OCP, these are really small things that we're just sort of surfacing as continuous thoughts. One is show me when I go to update my cluster, I want to know why I don't see a particular path to a particular version. So being able to surface the missing patches and surfacing also the reasons why that they were pulled. We've heard a lot of times from customers that 4 out of their 5 clusters have migrated, and then they go into update to a next and they don't understand why that version may no longer be there. So this is just some thought of surfacing the numbers and explanations in the context of the console, very early mock-ups. And then this is alerting when a channel is reaching end of life. So adding a recommendation notification, letting you know that the channel that you're currently in is reaching end of life and that you should change that channel and upgrade as soon as possible. And then thinking of ways to denote that as a visual UI element as well on the cluster settings page next to that visualization.
Hey, can you go back a screen, sir?
This guy?
Yeah, so I just want to reiterate this one. We've had scenarios where we'll discover something, right? And so at that point we do pull that edge because we're like, okay, we gotta resolve some issue. We're noticing some kind of pattern or something's happening. So let's pull that. And again, it's all about increasing trust and transparency with our customers so they know what's going on. So we want to surface to y'all any information that we have with you of why and when, and then again, try to resolve that issue as soon as possible. So this I think is a really important piece of the work we're doing. So, all right, back to me.
Oops. And then this is a small thing too that we're working with some teams on to try to understand how we can surface node versions or the status of a node during an update. So what you'll see here, it's probably hard to see, but under the status, you have nodes that say that they're ready. And there's 2 conditions. They're either ready and waiting to update, or they're ready and up to date. And so we would like somehow to surface that level of information, either underneath that ready status with waiting to update or up to date, or somehow surfacing the versions that the nodes are on. So you can really track and understand the progress of what's happening and just providing, again, more transparency into that process. And I think that's all I had to share. But all that to say is that we continue to track and hear the feedback regarding upgrades. And so there's a lot on this list that we haven't even gotten to yet. And are just continuing to sort of listen and understand what will make the biggest impact and start to build that trust.
Again, do you by chance have the link to the new access thing where they show the crazy spider web graph?
Oh, I have that somewhere, I think.
So I kind of want to share that.
If you find it faster, go ahead and drop it in chat or on stream or whatever. We were just looking at it yesterday, actually.
Yeah. So
There you go.
select some stuff here. This is new. We added this to our customer portal, which kind of does some of the stuff that we were talking about doing in OCP.
Oops.
And
Just gonna log in real quick.
Ooh.
no update path for that one.
Yeah. Like you can get yourself
There we
painted
go.
into a corner with this
Yeah.
tool.
All right, so that now click the web one. Is that the one that shows the? Oh, there's the graph at the bottom. So behind the scenes, this is what I call the spider web, right? Like this crazy mess of every permutation of getting to point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of complexity behind there. And we do try to simplify it and give you all the best path forward. We don't want you to have to think about the spider web. That's a bad experience.
Right.
But that's what's behind the scenes. And it's super complex, as you all could tell. So I think, Megan and team, you guys have done an excellent job of like really bringing out the essence of the UI and the experience and simplifying it, but also yet providing the transparency necessary for our users to get a feel of what's happening behind the scenes. So
nice.
This is really cool. And then let's share this URL with everybody as well. So this is live today.
I did. I put it in chat.
Oh, nice.
And I think this is more of what we're trying to think about to surface in the context of OCM as well. Both the CLI and then the UI paths to get where you need to be.
And I'd like to point out that all of this is transparent so long as you built your apps to take advantage of the resiliency of Kubernetes or OpenShift. If you have single pod applications, you're going to notice downtime because if it upgrades a node that pod is running on, well, your application's down. So make sure you have multiple pods spread out across multiple nodes when you're doing updates.
Yeah, if you guys build your apps like that, then you should not even notice
a hiccup, hopefully. Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, that's the power of Kubernetes, a great orchestration scheduling tool.
Super exciting. Megan, thank you so much. That was awesome. All right, now we're gonna hand it off to Sam, aka I like to call him the maestro. He always fixes it. So thank you, Sam, for all that. So we got some cool demos for you now.
All right, thanks. I should be sharing.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so I just want to demo quickly one other feature in console that admins can do. So the OpenShift version 3 console was very developer focused, and in version 4, we still support all those various developer workflows, but we also support a number of admin tasks. Megan shared some of those things around cluster settings, around upgrading and upgrade status. I just wanted to demo how you would set up identity providers in OpenShift Console. You may not be aware that you can do this through the UI. It's definitely something that's possible to do through the CLI. If you look at the various topics for the different identity providers, there are a number of steps you need to do. If you're using the CLI, you have to create a secret and a certain namespace. You need to go in and work with YAML and update the OAuth config, and there are a number of steps. And it's good you can do this through the CLI because you can script it, or you can commit your YAML manifest to source control. But if all you want to do is set up an IDP, it's pretty easy to do through the UI. So I wanted to share that. So this is a 4.7 nightly cluster. You do see the version not found because it's a nightly build and you can't upgrade from nightly builds, as Megan and Ali were talking about earlier. But under cluster settings, there's a global configuration tab. And here you have all the various config resources for the different cluster components. So you can see here, there's one for OAuth. That's where you configure the integrated OAuth server to set up authentication in the cluster. So by default, when you install, all you have is the kubeadmin identity provider. So you have one kubeadmin user, which is essentially root on the cluster. And then when you log in, you also get this message. If you're logged in as kubeadmin saying, hey, you're logged in as this admin user, you should really go and set up identity providers. So there's a link here in the banner, but you can also get to this later through the cluster settings pages. So if I click OAuth here, it's a new cluster. I don't have any identity providers configured yet. And you can add them here through this dropdown.
Sam, can you go back a page real quick?
Sure.
I just want to show one other thing. If you click the 3 dots on the right, it's like a little hidden shortcut as well. You get all your options right there also, so you can skip.
Yeah, you can also see the API as well.
Nice.
But if you're using the web forms, you don't need to know the API, which is nice. So I was going to show configuring 2 different identity providers today. So I was going to start with HT password, which is a pretty simple one. With HT password, you create an HT password file using a command line tool. And then you configure OpenShift to use that HT password file, which has all the users and the encrypted passwords in it. So you say, I add identity provider, HT password. It's really easy. There are only 2 fields. There's the name and there's a default pre-field. And this will show up if you have more than one identity provider. This name will actually show up on login when you have to pick which one you want to use to log in. So I can pick a name like Twitch. And then the other thing you need is the HT password file. So I was going to create one today from scratch. So most Linux systems will have the HT password command. It's also available on Windows if you have Apache HTTP server, for instance. So you say HT password -c to create a new file, twitch.ht password, and then you tell it what user you want to add. So I'll add user Twitch, and then prompts you for a password. So I type this
It might be a silly question, but does the file name have to end in HT password?
It does not. It's a convention, but it doesn't. It can be any file. And then you can go through and add additional users here. But I'll just add the one for now. So now I've got the HT password file here. And then I just go here and I simply select the file. Folder, Twitch HT password, and click add. And I'm done. So that's pretty easy, right? So it does take a moment for this to roll out. So if I go back to the cluster settings page here and I go to cluster operators, I can see the progress of the authentication operator rolling out the new config to its various replicas. So this might take a minute or so.
Okay.
But as soon as this completes, then the change will be live.
Can we actually go to the logs?
You can. It's already done.
It's too fast.
Yeah. So if you were to go over, one nice thing is like all the various cluster operators run as pods on the cluster, so you can actually go in and see all of their logs. So there's an OpenShift authentication operator project, and pretty much all the operators use the same convention. So they're always OpenShift -operator name. So you can go in, you see you have one pod here, and you should be able to, okay, there's a lot of there's a lot of data here. But if something goes wrong, you can often troubleshoot by looking at these log files. But now that I've set up this identity provider, hang on, let me move my.
So a request from the audience. Authentication is something this is from, I'm gonna say Tony TV. Authentication is something I would like to learn more about. Creating admins doesn't have a lot. Doesn't seem to be a lot of walkthroughs on creating admins, but it looks easy enough though. So as we go through this IDP process, think of the cluster admin versus the cluster user, if we can.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So Sam, I was gonna say maybe we go. So you created that new user, right? he's not, the new user isn't visible in the cluster yet, right? Like, so if you go to user management section, you won't see the user yet because they haven't logged in, correct?
Right.
That's right. Yeah.
So you have to, yeah. So that happens once the user logged in. And then, which is I think a little weird, because then you could go add roles and RBAC so that they can be a cluster admin, right?
Yes, you can. So you could go and say role bindings and say, if you want to make the Twitch user a cluster admin.
Yeah.
Go into roles and role bindings, which is how Kubernetes manages source control to different things. And there are a bunch of roles that are out of the box. There is, like, for instance, the cluster admin role that basically makes the user a super user. So you can say cluster admin, you say user, and then the subject name is the username here. It could also be a service account or group. So let's do user Twitch. So when I do this, this creates the role binding that makes the Twitch user a cluster admin. So I haven't logged in as Twitch. There's no Twitch user yet, but you're still allowed to create the role binding. It's kind of a Kubernetes thing where you can create resources in any order, and eventually when everything's there, things just work, right? So as an admin, even if the user hasn't logged in yet, I can grant different authorities to that user. So if I go log out now, this is going to kick me back over to this page, and it's because I have multiple identity providers. So if I only have a single identity provider, this gets skipped and you go directly to the login. I still have the kubeadmin identity provider, which is the default one when you create the cluster, and then also the Twitch one. So let me pick Twitch.
So sorry to interrupt, Sam.
Go ahead.
Previously, on one of our other shows, we brought on Andrew Block, and Andrew Block came in and he showed us how to customize his login page. And one of the things that he did was he actually parsed out the kubeadmin IDP, right? So you can still get to the kubeadmin IDP, but it wasn't displayed as one of the options there. So if you want to kind of have that kubeadmin backdoor, you can. But for your normal users that would come to this page, it would be hidden. And there's some cool stuff you could do with the login page, because this is customizable. So go look at that previous stream.
Yeah, I'm gonna go grab the link to it.
So let me log in as user Twitch. I must have typed it wrong. Twitch. There we go. Okay, the warden's asking me to save the password. Let me dismiss that. Uh-oh. There we go. Okay. So now I'm logged in, and since I created the role binding, you can see that, let me see. I probably created the role binding wrong. Let me go back out. I created it in the namespace. So I'm only an admin in the authentication operator namespace. I didn't create it as a cluster-wide role binding.
So before you log out, one quick thing is you'll notice that blue banner that was at the very top of like, hey, go set up OAuth is gone now, right? That's people ever wondered how to get rid of that blue banner. It's you create the IDP, you log in as a non-kubeadmin user, and voila, the blue banner is now gone. All right, Sam, sorry.
Yeah, I don't have permission to view it in this namespace. Hang on. Okay, role bindings. Yeah, so I created it as a namespace scope role binding right here instead of cluster scope. So let me log out. I'm going to log back in as kubeadmin, so I can show you setting up an additional identity provider. So let me copy the kubeadmin password from when I installed. Now I'm once again logged in as the kubeadmin user. So I'm going to go in and let's go back to global configuration OAuth. And then you can see the Twitch identity provider. I'm going to go ahead and add GitHub as well. All right, so in order to do this, you also need to do some configuration on the GitHub side. this is all detailed in the documentation. One thing you need to know is that you need to have a GitHub organization or team set up, because otherwise any GitHub user in the world could log into your cluster, which is probably not what you want. So I'm going to go into my GitHub here. Let's go to settings. And if I can find it, organization. So I set up a demo organization here that just has me for now. But if you go to settings from here, and then I believe it's the developer settings, you can register a new application, which is what you need to do to set up auth with OpenShift using GitHub. So let me do that now. And you can give this application any name, my OpenShift cluster. It asks for a URL, so you could make this your cluster URL or anything you want, really. We use description blank for now, and then you need a callback URL. So what you put in here is documented in the OpenShift docs. I'm going to copy this so I don't typo anything. But essentially, you need to have a specific callback URL so that when you're done approving OpenShift from the GitHub side, it will redirect to our OAuth server and continue the login. So this URL is pretty much the same, except this part will be whatever your actual cluster is, and then this last segment here will be the name of the IDP you create. So we're using the GitHub as the name of the IDP, so that's what I would put in right here. And this is all documented right here in the OpenShift docs. So let me register this application. So now I have a client ID. I can copy that and then use that as the client ID here. The next thing I need is a client secret from GitHub. So I don't have any client secrets yet. I will generate a new secret. It's asking me to prompt, asking me for my password again. And there it is. So it generated a new secret. I'm going to go ahead and copy that and then put this back over here. And then if you're not using GitHub Enterprise, you don't need a host name or a CA file. What you do need is an organization. So let me type in organization here, which is SGadget Demos, the one I set up. So it could be an organization or a team, but one of these is required unless you're using GitHub Enterprise.
Can you do both? Teams translate to group, you think?
I'm not sure offhand if you can do both. You can specify more than one. You probably can. I think you can. So if you specify more than one, as long as the user is a member of any of those organizations or team, this should be allowed.
Yeah, cool. Actually says cannot be used in combination with organizations.
Okay. There's your answer.
Okay.
So you can have multiple, but it has to be one or the other.
Yeah.
So let me add this, and we should be done. So GitHub shows up here. Let's go back to cluster settings and check the progress of the authentication operator as it rolls out these changes.
Meanwhile, should we add some RBAC?
Yeah, I try to do it right this time. Let me go back to role bindings. So here's what I did wrong. Let's see. Cannot create a cluster role binding from here. Let's do that.
So one of our regulars, James Dade, he's asking if OCP could pull users from AD in advance. He's already got groups set up and everything. Like, does he have to have that user log in every time, or can he create all the things in advance of that user landing in the right place?
Yeah, that's a great question. I believe that there is actually a mapping method you can set up when you configure the identity provider, and it has different behavior depending on the mapping.
Right.
So we can look at that. So by default, we use claim mapping, which let me find a configuration. So Console does have this Home Explorer where you can see all the various APIs, and we can drill into the OAuth API here. So there's an identity provider map, and then it looks like it doesn't give you detailed information about these.
That's mapping method.
Yeah. Oh, mapping method. Yeah, mapping method. Not a lot of detail here, but let's see if I can find some docs on it. Probably this one. So mapping method, okay. So this is what you want to set if you want different behavior. And you can go in and create users manually in the system. Let's see. So typically you use claim, and then you just log in as the user to the identity provider, and OpenShift automatically creates the user. It looks like there are different ways of doing it. So you probably want lookup, where you can go in and create the users manually, and then it will map only to existing users. So if I have an SPadget GitHub ID, I could use lookup mapping method, and then it would only let me log in if there's an SPadget user on the cluster. So if you use this, if you use lookup mapping method, that's another way where you can set up GitHub as your identity provider without providing an organization if you're not an admin for an organization, say, or you don't want to go through those steps.
So this description is so much better than what we have in the UI. Let's open the bug for that and get all this into the UI, because that's fantastic.
Far better. Yeah.
So let me go ahead and let me log out. I can show you the GitHub login. So if I've done this all right, let me close some of these tabs here. I'll leave this one open. Okay, so now I have another option here. I have GitHub. So when I click on this, it'll go through and it's asking me to go ahead and authorize my OpenShift cluster to be able to read my identity on GitHub. So let me authorize, and then it redirects back. And then I'm logged in. So you can see my full name here. This is pulled in through my GitHub profile. So Sam Paget, there I am, and I can create projects and use OpenShift.
That's awesome.
This is when I wish I had a AD instance to test with.
Great.
JP Dave, let me know if you're still having issues. It sounds like you have a ball of issues you're dealing with right now. So yeah, I dropped a link to the docs in chat.
Any other questions from audience members? And Sam, thank you. That was awesome. That was,
Yeah, sure,
thank you.
I learned a lot
On the
myself
spot.
on that one. The claim one is new to me.
Yeah, I don't know how AD treats that like claim assignment, because AD isn't quite LDAP. It's kind of its own beast. I know I've had problems with that in the past, but yeah, if you have issues or the docs seem wrong, please let me know and we can get that corrected.
Yeah, Active Directory
Awesome.
is pretty difficult.
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. Right. Like, so we want to make sure that we have A, all the use cases covered, and then B, like actual functionality working. So yeah, if something's not working, let us know. We can definitely get it fixed. So awesome show. Let's see. JP Dade says, yeah, I tried all the mappings. I have bigger and different fish to fry right now. It works. It might not be perfect. I will try that on my next cluster. Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, JP Dade's doing a lot of switching over of infrastructure and all that fun stuff. So yeah. So cool. Great show, everybody. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Ali, as always. It's great to yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. It's always great to have y'all on, because some folks get to learn how kind of like the sausage is made, and sausage is fun. AD is Active Directory, Tony. And then there's, all kinds of things that you can use instead of Active Directory, like GitHub or Twitch or any of these other things. So cool. Great show, everybody. Thank you. Appreciate you joining us today. The next show isn't for a few hours. At 3 p.m. Eastern, 2000 UTC, we will be having the one and only GitOps Happy Hour. So stay tuned for that. I have not heard what we're talking about today, but I'm sure it will be fun. All right. Everybody stay safe out there and have a great day. Bye.
Bye.